And good evening, everyone. It's the Purification Program, week number 3. So we've got some cool things to talk about tonight. I just want to remind you that week 3, I know I'm not letting you have wine, but, there will be that time. So, I think I'm funny, so I have to put these little things in here. So when we do these kind of programs, this is also the point of this, is to really kind of create a new you. And, I like the program because it's 21 days, but 21 days is also a way to make a new habit or form a new habit. So, I like for this, this is all about choices. So 7 days from now, you're going to either be blown away by how much you improved and the way you look and feel and perform, or you're going to regret that you're not having done your best. The choice is yours. So if you don't feel like you've done quite your best first 2 weeks, really tweak it and rock it out this next week. That's really important. The in-class last night and weigh-ins, I mean, we've got 10, 12 pounds down. That's really exciting. I'm excited for them. And it's nice to watch the change in everybody. So the diet doesn't change. The 15 to 21 days that we have now are still the same. You can do your veggies with unlimited salad dressing. You can do your olive oil and your lemon and spices for your dressing. No pre-made dressings. Remember, they're high in high fructose corn syrup and hydrogenated fat, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And same thing, your fruit, eat 2 times as many veggies as fruit, and you know the drill. Try to stick more with berries. Especially if you're on a weight management, if you want to lose weight through this, then keep the fruit down, save it for your shake, and limit it to berries. Doesn't mean you can't have a banana, but maybe just a piece of a banana instead. They're just so full of sugar, and that's one of the things we talked about last week, trying to kind of really curb our sugar in our diet. And if you want to also be on a weight management, be cautious with your quinoa and cautious with your lentils, because they're going to be carb heavy. Use maybe a cauliflowered rice like we did in class last night. And I'll put the recipe up tomorrow when I send out the recording with the recipe for what I did last night. We did a Thai chicken curry, coconut curry, and with cauliflowered rice. It was really good. So sorry you missed out on that, but I'll share the recipe so you can have your time with that. So on your oils, still 4 to 7 teaspoons, the good oils, not the bad oils. Make sure you're getting enough water in the day. And if you're drinking, I allowed you to have a Swiss water decaf coffee, or if you're drinking a herbal tea that's dark, it takes 2 cups of whatever 1 cup you drank to push it through your kidneys. So you want to be able to keep those kidneys working hard, because they are detoxifying this whole time as we go, especially since we're using the GI adsorb. And remember, the GI adsorb, your supplement schedule doesn't change. You're doing 5 green food in the morning, 5 at night, 3 gastrofiber in the morning, 3 at night, and you're continuously doing that 4 GI adsorb at night before you go to bed with a full glass of water, okay? So the danger of seed oils, and I usually go into great extent about this, but I'm just going to kind of cut it short because I really want to talk about exercise and the importance of this. So these are the oils we want to stay away from. And I know you're thinking, well, they've told us for years that canola oil is healthy. Well, it's not. It's a seed oil that's been hydrogenated, and the process of hydrogenating destroys the oil and makes it not even a viable thing that our body can handle. It makes the boiling points really high. And think about your body. Our body temperature is 98.6. Your body temperature is not going to raise up to that 200, 400 degrees that they bring those temperatures up to fry foods. So when you get that in there, it kind of gets built in your system. That's with, like, for me, like cellulite on women's legs. And I can tell you, for me personally, having done this now since 2000, I did it, the first time I did it was 2004, taught it as a class beginning 2005, but I've noticed a marked change in my legs and the cellulite that I had, even though I was an athlete. There are still things that I ate that I didn't know better. So we all make mistakes, but this is the time to improve those mistakes. But these are all the oils that you want to get rid of. If you have them in your house, give them to somebody you don't like, or pour the oil out on your weeds and recycle your vessels, but don't use it for yourself anymore. We call those the hateful 8. And they're polysaturated vegetable oils. And that's your corn oil, your cottonseed oil, your soybean, safflower, peanut, and your canola oils. And those are just, they're just hard on us because we can't digest them, and they're used in foods so they have a long shelf life. So do we know why they're bad? Well, they raise your bad cholesterol. And your bad cholesterol, I hate to say good and bad. Your LDL, our body doesn't make bad things. Your LDL, your low density lipoprotein, is really designed to protect us. So if you have a breach in any of your vascular system, it's the LDL that closes up that hole so you don't bleed out. And the good cholesterol, the HDL, is like WD-40 for your vascular system. It keeps everything smooth and running through. The LDL builds up a little bit, but it does that in the need to meet the amount of triglycerides, the amount of sugar that we eat in our diet. So the LDL's responsibility, produced by the liver, to grab the triglycerides. So that makes the LDL bigger and bigger. But on your lipid panel, when you get it back from your doctor, most doctors don't test the true important part of the cholesterol system, and that's your VLDL. And VLDL means very low density lipoprotein. That's really the true measure of if you would need a statin. And I'm telling you, with doing the 21-day program, in my experience with my patients, we've reduced cholesterol just by changing eating, getting the liver working properly. So there's not a need for a statin, which is just going to cause, is just blocking a problem. I mean, it's a symptom, not really fixing the problem. So this is why it's bad. As that LDL raises, the HDL has to work harder to get it out. So that's why we want to watch those foods. So we took all the good fat out of everything, because back in the 60s, Eisenhower had a heart attack, and Ansel Keys, who was a scientist and research guy, said, oh my gosh, it was the saturated fat that caused his heart attack. So they went on this big kick. To this day, we have the American Heart Association that they sell things on boxes of cereal that say heart healthy. They said, remove the saturated fat. It's terrible for you. Don't eat it. So we took the fat out of foods, but then the foods didn't taste very good. So what do we do to make them taste better? We put sugar in them. So now maybe our heart disease rate has decreased a little bit, but our obesity and diabetes has gone through the roof. So that's the part of it. But the frustrating part is there is documented evidence, research-based evidence that says, there's nothing wrong with saturated fats. We've been eating those for years. It's really the carbohydrates and the sugar that really cause a lot of that, and the processed food. Not saying you can't have sugar and carbohydrates, but these are foods that we saw growing up, and you can still go to the grocery store and see this, and you can see on the top left corner it says lowers the LDL cholesterol up to 14%, and down at the bottom it says no trans fatty acids. And then on the label here on the right, I want you to learn to read a label. You can see that it says no trans fatty acids, but look at the ingredients. Now, the third or fourth ingredient, the first ingredient is canola oil. The second or third one is partially hydrogenated soybean oil. Those are all hydrogenated. Those are all trans fats. So the government legally says that they can do this, and I'll show you the code on that in just a second. But here's, the difference. You can see that saturated fats versus trans fats. The saturated fats, they're, good for the cell membranes. They create healthy function. They enhance your hormone production. They suppress inflammation. They lower your LDL, but raise your HDL. They puts tissues into reserve, so you have extra protection, helps you with your immune system, helps insulin receptors, and enhances the whole immune system just over the top, as well as encouraging, production for just your balance of inflammation. So, and the trans fats do completely the opposite of that. And you can see the products here on the right. These are the labels from all these products. Every one of those products say, no trans fatty acids, but look, they've got 3 and 4 of the ingredients are some type of hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oil. So, we're getting led astray here, and that's why I take the time to educate you. I didn't know these things. So if I didn't know them, I'm sure you didn't. And I just love these, these pictures I find, they're young, they're in love, they eat lard, so we know that this was a good thing in the past, and we've made it a bad thing. And Joan Gussow is a really famous chemist, and I like her little quote here: as for butter versus margarine, I trust cows more than chemists. And this is an experiment on the right here that you see kids do, and it just cracks me up, because an ant. Now think about how much bigger our brain is, educated brain is, than an ant's brain. And an ant even knows to go to the real butter. They don't go to the reduced fat or the margarine. They all go to the real butter. Be more like an ant. Okay. Your brain is so much bigger. But when we're looking at trans fats, these are the foods that they're in. Your donuts, your chicken nuggets, anything that has to stay on a shelf for a long time. And I've said this before, but Marianne and I, when during the holidays, we enjoy food, but I make a restriction. If it's home cooked, I'll eat it, because if somebody brings a pie, say a pecan pie from Publix, it's been sitting on the shelf for 2 weeks. It's not fresh, and so it's loaded with Crisco to make that crust and a variety of other things to protect it. So these are all the foods. Yes, your cookies and your ice creams, your microwave popcorn. Yes, yes, yes. Potato chips, pastries, pizzas, biscuits, all of them have it in there. And, if you go get French fries at a fast food restaurant, guess what they cook it in? That's right, trans fats. So it's estimated that 40% of the U.S. foods typical in the supermarket have the trans fats. And this is the labeling you see. So this is why it's so confusing. I remember having a discussion with my mom, and we got into an argument. She was eating some chips, but it said, she told me these don't have any fat. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, it says right here, no trans fat. I'm like, no, Mom. I said, that only means there's no cholesterol. There's no animal fat in there, because that's where cholesterol comes from, is animal fat. And so we had this huge argument, but here's the crux of the whole situation here. Let me just pop ahead one and I'll jump back. This is what I'm talking about. So just because it says no trans fatty acids or trans fats doesn't mean they're not in there. You can very obviously read the label here. These are Marie Callender croutons. Yeah, I'm not allowed in Publix very often. You can see why, because I go in and take pictures of everything, and they escort me out almost. Not really, but it's fun to watch when I go in there with my camera. But here's the line down at the bottom. It says the nutrition facts label can state 0 grams of trans fat for food. If a food product contains less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving. 1 gram of trans fat per day is over the limit. And it says if this product contains partially hydrogenated oils, and then it may contain small amounts of trans fats, even if the label says 0. And there's the exact labeling. You can go right to that website and you'll pull this exact thing up. But you can see on this package label, serving size is 5 croutons. I don't know many people that only eat 5 croutons. And you can see that it says 0 trans fats, but clearly looking at the label, you can see that it says partially hydrogenated soybean oil, plus a little high fructose corn syrup thrown in there for your delight. And I think there was a couple other soybean oil down below. So, I mean, it's loaded with stuff that, when it has this many ingredients and some of the ones you can't pronounce, it's not really something I want you eating. There are certainly better choices than that. Make your own darn croutons, okay? So when we come back to reading labels, I think this is also important, because we see the label, but do we really know what it means? And if you've had a functional medicine appointment with me, we've done some personalized nutrition, I've explained this. So a gram of fat equals 9 calories. A gram of carbohydrate equals 4 calories. A gram of protein equals 4 calories. So if you look on the label, all labels are listed this way. So you'll see the serving size, and then you'll see amount per serving, amount of calories per serving, and then the calories from fat. And then it'll list the fats first, cholesterol, sodium, potassium, then total carbohydrates, whether it's dietary fibers, sugars, or sugar alcohols, proteins, your vitamins, and then iron, and then your protein next, and then your vitamins. So if we're going to add this label up to find out how many true calories are in this particular product, it's kind of a made up product. We take our fat grams of 4.95, multiply by 9, which gives us the 44.55. We take our carbohydrate, which is 20.18, and multiply that by 4, which gives us the 80.72. We take our protein, which is 3.6 grams, multiply that by 4, which gives us 14.4. And you add that up, and it really gives us a total of 139.7. So somebody's hiding something. There's only 137 calories supposedly in this food. So that's what we want to look at. And next week, I'll talk a little bit about why we want to watch carbohydrates, what to look for, what foods to look for. If you ate a half a cup of whatever this is, say it were ice cream, and you ate a half a cup, but who eats a half a cup of ice cream? So you already have 20 grams of fat, then it's 40 grams of fat. I mean, sorry, carbohydrates. Then it's going to be 40 grams of carbohydrates for double the serving size. So that's why we look at serving size as well. And back here at the cookies, this is the other thing I wanted to mention too, is that when you look at the cookie, the serving size is 2 cookies. You can see the 19 grams of carbohydrates in there, and it's mostly in the form of sugar. And you can see the cookies, but these cookies are really small. I mean, most people would just eat the whole box, which was part of the problem. You know, they don't pay attention to the serving size, they just eat the whole box. So if you ate the whole box, there's 9 servings in there. So that's almost 1,000 calories just in that box. And then you look at your grams of carbohydrates, you know, that's even more, that's a lot. So you've really overdone your carbohydrates for the day. But I'll be a little more specific about how to calculate yours. So are all fats bad? No, we have good fats versus bad fats. And you can see on the left all the good fats, your butter, your lard. I mean, we don't eat lard anymore. We get it from, we have a CSA, Noble Roots Farm in our area, and we'll get lard and tallow sometimes, chicken fat. I mean, we just don't use those things like we used to. Cold pressed olive oil, sesame oil, flaxseed oil, tropical oils that are hydrogenated or not hydrogenated. So you can have a coconut oil, but if you go to our Publix and you get Luann's coconut oil, it is not organic and it is not expeller pressed or cold pressed. It is hydrogenated and it'll say it on there. And that makes it cheaper and it stays on that shelf forever. And your palm oils, and sometimes you have things with sunflower oil in it. I'm not saying that you can't have them. Read your label and make sure it says sunflower oil that's expeller organic and expeller pressed or cold pressed. That makes that oil okay. It makes that particular seed oil okay. The other oils like canola and vegetable oils, I mean, think about how hard, like for corn oil, how hard a grain of corn is. And they have to really pulverize that and put it through this whole process that I just didn't go into during this class to make it what it is. And then it's not even good for us. So only because it makes things last longer on the shelf. So it's good economically for businesses, but that's not supporting our health. So you can see on this right side, these are all anything that says partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated or industrially produced, they are all bad. You can heat those fats really high and it doesn't destroy them. Like olive oil, you don't really saute anything too much in olive oil because it doesn't have a very high boiling point and it destroys the oil. So we'd use something more like a coconut oil to do something like that. So there's a lot of, intricacies about the good oils and the bad oils, but if it has a package on there and it says heart healthy, be aware. And when you get your extra virgin olive oil, you want to make sure that it's extra virgin olive oil, expeller pressed or cold pressed or first press. That's the best oil. And just so you know, restaurants these days, because olive oil is expensive, they'll mix olive oil with another oil. And so you don't even know that. So you may be getting it and not be aware of that. So I want you to watch for what we call hidden trans fats. So look at the labels and if they say anything that says hydrogenated oil, partially hydrogenated oil, hydrogenated palm kernel oil, hydrogenated soybean oil, vegetable oil, or corn oil, any of those, beware. They're hiding in your food. So make sure you look at that. If those are on there, those are trans fats. So I like these quotes, and you hear me say that whatever you put in your mouth is either an act of nutrition or an act of suicide. I know that sounds horrible. This is actually the quote. The food you eat can be either the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So that does sound a lot nicer, but mine is more impactful. So it's a choice you're making what you put in your mouth. And being fit is 80% of your diet, because in 20% exercise, you can't outrun your fork. So even if you're eating well, I explained it as if you have your car parked in the garage and you're not driving it and you keep putting gas in it, that gas is going to spill all over the place. You don't need to put gas in it. You're not utilizing it. So on the days that you're not exercising or not, expending any energy, you don't need to overfuel your body. On the days you go out and, ride a bike, or do your exercise or, run a couple miles, then you can add your extra food in there for your fuel. And these are some marketing translations, and this is all marketing. So we always have to be careful of this. And I this is one I like to just kind of give you a smattering of what stuff means. So when it says no sugar added, it really means instead we've induced a variety of sweet tasting carcinogenic chemicals. Artificial flavoring set means a horrible mix of chemicals that will trick your brain into thinking you're eating something healthy. Natural flavoring means a tiny drop of lemon or something added to the chemical crap listed in item 2. Low fat, instead of fat, we've added a chemical cocktail that's even worse than fat ever was. And number 5, an essential source of vitamins and minerals. We have added a salad of unavailable vitamins and minerals to hide the rest of the garbage that we are feeding you and your children. So be aware what those words mean. I mean, that's why I want you to learn to read labels. If I'm going to put it in my mouth, I want to know where it came from. That's important. When Marianne she does all the grocery shopping because she doesn't like me to go to the store with her anyway. But when I go in the store, my patients are coming down the aisle and they see me and they like quickly run around the corner so they don't see what's in their basket. Or if I do see what's in their basket, they're like, well, I never get this. I'm like, well, you've got it now. So we do that. But, she tells me that it takes longer to shop just because if she wants to get something, she's got to read all the labels, and find something that's clean that we want to put in our diet. So once you learn the substance or the ingredients of things, like in our house, we have a pantry of multiple things that we can pull together and make anything, but they're all clean ingredients in cans that are BPA free. So that's something I really haven't even had a chance to talk about without keeping you here all night. But what I wanted to talk about is sarcopenia. And if you haven't heard this verbiage in the news lately, I mean, it's just not coming around. We've known about it for years, but it means flesh death. So sarcopenia meaning flesh death. Really, sarco means tissue, and penia means poverty. So it means poor tissue. Well, that's our muscle tissue, and this happens when we age. And when we talk about aging, it's anybody over 50. So they're considering us elderly over 50. So I'm sorry, I'm in that group too, but just be aware. And in my profession, I have two sides to my professional life. I have one where I'm trying to save people from themselves late in the game, and the other part is making the above never happen. So that's why I encourage patients to do a functional medicine appointment. Let's look at what you're eating. Let's look at your blood. Let's get a personalized nutrition for you so these things don't happen to you down the road. Or they do, and then we have to scramble to fix them. And I'd rather you make changes on inspiration and not desperation. So that's kind of when I look at stuff, that's what I look at when I'm looking at patients. So let's talk about exercise. So we have a physiological headroom, and that's the difference between the most you can do and the least you can do. And that creates like an arch. And then we have that area under that arch, which we call under the curve. And that's the physiological headroom across a lifetime. So that's the measure of that. I don't know if you remember Max Headroom, that show a long time ago. You know how he got his name. When he went under the bridge, he hit his head, and that last thing he saw was a sign that said Max Headroom. That's how he remembered his name. I always think of that when I talk about physiological headroom. So when we talk about this, most of my audience is in the age range, a little bit younger and a little bit older than myself. But it's a concern for me. I know I see the changes my body makes as I age. So I want to, mitigate the risk. So aging in the musculoskeletal system, bone density reduction starts at the age of 30, escalated in women after menopause. Joint cartilage becomes thinner, proteoglycans become altered. That's protective measures of the joints and covering of the joints. We have less resistance as we age. Joints become stiff, and range of motion is limited due to the connective tissue being really rigid, and muscle contraction speed decreases as we age. So what is common is not normal. So modern hunter and gatherers live to the age of 70. So what is common is not normal. Modern hunter and gatherers, I mean, they live to be 72, and that includes the effect of infant mortality. So, people that die young and people that die old, and they come with an average age, and that's how they come up with that infant mortality and that age range of 72. So we have death from infection and trauma. We have the high physiological headroom into extreme old age, and we have a large area under that curve. That's what we should strive for. But this is what normal aging should look like. This is how we are. But if you look at our average adult, none of us look like this. And we're not carrying bows around and arrows either, but you know what I mean, as far as physiologically. So we are heterotrophs. We catch our own food. Autotrophs make their own food. So all your plants and your algae and all that make their food. So we have the choice of what we catch to eat. And some of us just don't make really good choices. So over a period of time, this is what happens. This becomes our common, but not normal. And this is becoming all too common. So there's not a lot of distance between the caregiver and the care receiver. So, and it's a sad state of affairs that we have in our nation. So when we look at this aging curve, and this was done by the particular study was done in the University of Miami, and it's a periodized prescription for improved aging. So you can see the dotted line shows lifelong training. So if you started training, when you're mid-age in your 20s, and you started, really peaking it, it's going to carry you to your life through that 90. So you've got a lot of that area under the curve. Then you can see the bent aging of curves. So you can see the dash line there. That's maybe somebody that didn't do anything. And then you see that somebody that's completely sedentary, it just drops down dramatically. But Dr. Patton Jones said, well, it doesn't even do that. It really does kind of a drop down, a little brief come back up and a drop down, and it just really just decelerates. And, by the time you're 90, you're not even moving. And the whole idea for us is really to, as we live, we work so hard to retire and play, but if our bodies don't have the capabilities to do that, it's all for naught. I see patients in my practice who, they work real hard and they don't take care of themselves, and then they spend their next 20 years of retirement in chronic disease. Who wants that? I mean, we don't want to live sitting in a wheelchair drooling on ourselves. I mean, barring something dramatic happening that we can't help, but healthy aging is something that we have control over. And these are aging and the diseases of modern civilization. I mean, we should buy stock in these roller chairs. I mean, this is what we see now. People can't even walk by themselves without, aid. And there are 100% related to muscle loss. And that's occurs when they age, and that's what we call sarcopenia. So think about your parents, go to the grocery store, especially in our area. In Lake County, we've got a lot of, snowbirds that live here, and a lot of people retire here. So musculoskeletal health, which is that system of your muscles, ligaments, tendons, bones, and joints, that's what moves our body and helps us to maintain structure and form. And the scary fact is 1 in 2 American adults live with a musculoskeletal condition. And the question last night was asked, do they know? Oh, if your joints ache. If you try to get up in the morning and your body's super stiff, that's a condition. That's a musculoskeletal condition. Remember, muscle is muscle and the skeletal system. So muscle mass and function decline with age, and that decline of muscle mass starts in our 30s. And there's a significant decline when we get into our 50s. And your grip strength, by the time you're 80, between 20 and 80 reduces almost 50%. So muscle mass and function decline over the decades. And if you're not exercising, I mean, it's a dead decline, straight to your death. And so we have proven, over and over again that just exercise does a couple things. Not only does it protect your brain, but it makes us live longer. And I don't believe in anti-aging. I just think we should healthy age. We should be proud to age and be our best, versions of ourselves. But, arthritis in the US, it's just rampant, and this data from, a couple of years ago, 54 million adults have some form of arthritis, and the risk of arthritis increases as we get older. So, and it's more common in women. And if you're overweight and obese, it's going to be even more common, all that stress on the joints. So that's why we do a program like this. I mean, the purification process is to really help the liver. A really good side effect is that you lose weight. And that gets the pressure off the joints, which will reduce your risk of arthritis. Plus, the foods that we're eating are not inflammatory to our joints as well. But we're projecting 78 million adults to be diagnosed with some form of arthritis by 2040. We're in 2023. That's not that far away. That's less than 20 years. So to me, these are just like scary numbers. Job security for me, but still scary. So sarcopenia in the U.S., it's a loss of muscle mass, and if we lose muscle mass, we're going to lose strength, and that's related only to aging. So we lose our muscle mass at 50%, 50 years old, 1 to 2% annually. When we're 50 to 60, 1.5, and then 3%. And then as you get older, you can see that it really progresses. So by the time you're 80, you're losing 11 to, a great percentage compared to when we're younger. So when we're losing that muscle mass, that's what holds our bodies up. That's how we do our stuff. So the American Council of Aging came up with 10 biomarkers of health. And so in my practice, both chiropractic and functional medicine, I try to address all of these. And it's easy to do, but I can't do it if I can't get a patient to do that. So I always enlist in a teamwork effort here. So let's go through these biomarkers. So muscle mass and strength, I like to put those two together. Your skeletal muscle mass is your largest endocrine and immune system. So it's viable. It's what we need to keep our bodies alive. And our brain can't work without our muscle, and our muscle can't work without our brain. So we need both. And strength is independently associated with functional ability and balance. Think about as your mom and dad get older, their balance is a little bit off. But if I see athletes in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and up when I'm, competing in my nationals, and they're amazing athletes because they've been consistent through their whole life, and even the ones that started later in life. So 30% of loss of strength over 12 years in an elderly person, remember that's anybody over 50, can be restored in 1 year of strength training. That's awesome. So we have ways to fix it. We just have to turn the little buttons on in y'all to make you do it. And just exercise alone, this is so powerful. So when we exercise and that muscle works, we create myokines. And myokines then go into the bloodstream and do all of these. So in bone, it inhibits osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are what destroy bones. So it helps to keep the bone strong. In breast tissue, it inhibits mammary cancer and cell cancer growth. Pancreas, it increases this is the GLP-1, which is your glucose-like peptide 1 secretion, which is very protective of and protective of your blood sugar. Your gut also has increases of that GLP-1, and it also suppresses colon tumors. Your liver, you get glucose uptake, so your liver knows what to do with the glucose. It's not stored as fat. And then the WAT, that means the white adipose tissue. When we work out, it increases lipolysis. Lipolysis is a breaking down of fat, and glucose uptake and the thermogenic browning. So when our white fat, which is like Crisco, starts to turn brown, it becomes more metabolic. So also exercise then takes the brown adipose tissue, the BAT, and it increases the thermogenesis, which makes our body more metabolic and burn calories at a greater rate, and beta oxidation. So it protects us from free radical cells, which cause cancer. And then your brain. It increases your BDNF, and that's your brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that's for learning and memory. And these are things we want to have as we age, because if you don't have your brain, it's not going to do you any good. So use it or lose it. So here you can see on the right, the picture in the top is a 40-year-old triathlete. The next picture is a 74-year-old sedentary man. So you can see all the adipose tissue, which is in white, and you can see the muscle. That's the quadricep. That's like taking a slice of your quad out, your big part of your leg. And then you can see the triathlete down below, which is a 70-year-old. You can see the amount of muscle mass, and he may not have quite the compare the top picture. He may not have quite the muscle tone, but you can see the difference in the muscle mass and the fat. And the little round spot in the middle is the femur. So strength exercise is even more dramatic and fast. So this is a study that was done, a male subject, 92 years old, before and after 12 weeks of resistance training. You can see the picture on the left is when he started, and you can see the picture on the right is when he finished. He increased his muscle mass by 44%. That's like amazing in 12 weeks. And it's hard for me to get you to do something for 3 days or 21 days for that matter. So you can see the dramatic results here. It's just being consistent. Bone density, strength reductions, help to precede osteoporosis. So if we lose strength, the bones get weak because there's nothing supporting them. And that's why you often hear how women, their hip fractures and then they fall, their leg breaks and then they fall because their muscles aren't holding them up. The strength increase improvements on bone mass, we call that Wolff's Law. Pressure on bone builds bone. So that mechanical pressure of doing weight training, walking, cycling, those kind of things are going to be really helpful to build bone. And women, as we age and we lose our estrogen, where we are subject to bone loss, but we can prevent it by this. And it's not by drinking milk. That's so incorrect. And then we have some signaling from the myokine, which is what happens when the muscles, it's like the good product of muscle work, and it signals the interleukin 15, which you don't need to know about. I teach that to my doctors, but that's not important. But here's what I see in my office: osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, myalgia, fibromyalgia, low back pain, systemic lupus, osteoporosis, osteopenia. I mean, I have patients come in and they think it's like a death, call that they have osteoporosis. No, you can do something about it, and it's not taking Boniva. I mean, those are not things that you're taking something for a symptom, to help a symptom, not fix a problem. Tendinitis, tendinosis, plantar fasciitis, gout, bone fractures, ligamentous damage tears. Those are all what we see. All these can be prevented by just taking care of your darn body. You only get one, so take good care of it. And nutritional effects of bone density. So all the food that we eat, the components of it. So that's why we want to be organic and, nutrition rich and fiber dense foods, sun exposure, sleep patterns, your work, life or work shifts, like people that work all night long, or any of the modifiable factors all have an impact on your osteoporosis. And, there's any preventative and an intervention strategies you can do, are going to be optimized when you build the bone. And on your in body, we measure your dry, where it says dry mass, dry lean mass, that is your bone. Or I think it's just dry mass. That's your bone mass. So that's what you can measure in your density. So if you're working out, you can actually tell that by the in body. And this is what we have in the office. This is what you did if you came into class the first night. If you don't or haven't had the opportunity to come in the office, you can do that. Or go into your Google search and say in body near me, in body 570 near me, and go get on the scale, get a good picture of your body composition. It's not just about calories in and out. Body tissues are in competition, so they want to whatever you eat, they want to hang on to, and if you're not going to eat it, they're going to use it for something else or store it. So those myokines from the muscle work help to shift that toward more of a lean muscle. And interleukin 15 helps to leverage the battle, helps to kind of save and be protective of that muscle you're working so hard to get. Blood lipids, we've talked about this earlier, and we look at your lipid panels and we look at the VLDL, and that's one I don't see on the regular panel that your MDs are sending you out for. But these numbers are very loosely associated with heart disease. Strength training raises your HDL and lowers your LDL. And more important, it controls insulin and it decreases inflammation. When we talk about hemodynamics, we're talking about your heart. We have the Starling's law of the heart, and that's just talking about the increased pressure of your right side of your heart creates the increased cardiac output. So we want enhanced venous stroke. We want enhanced stroke volume. And what that means is that your heart is a muscle. You can't hand your heart a dumbbell. So the only way we can work our heart is by doing something cardiovascular, something like walking or jogging or bicycling or elliptical or rowing, anything that's going to raise your heart rate. And when you raise your heart rate, that makes the muscle have to work harder and the muscle gets stronger. So if it's an unexercised heart, it'll beat 72, let's say 80 beats per minute to get your blood pumping all through your body. An athlete will be probably anywhere from 45 to 55. So we'll say 50 beats per minute. So an athlete's heart is one strong beat and it pumps the blood through. So athlete heart beats 50 beats per minute, untrained person 80 beats in an hour, in a minute, in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. This one's going to last longer. This one's going to wear out because it's having to beat so much. So that's the hemodynamics. So the more you build that muscle, the more efficient that heart can pump. So that brings us to the omega-3s. So we did the index test. I'm getting results. They're just now coming in. Some of them are pending, but I just got emails in that they're going to be available. So we'll have those for next week. If you did the index test, if you haven't done it, you'll just contact the office and I'll, order a kit for you. But this measures how much omega-3 you have in your system. And the important part of this, the omega-3 is your anti-inflammatory, heart supportive, and your omega-6s are your pro-inflammatory. So your omega-6s are like peanuts and all your breads, all your carbohydrates, the grains, anything like that are going to be high in omega-6s. Any of your processed foods, high in omega-6s. Trans fats, high in omega-6s. And that's why when we have, when I say you can have grass-fed, grass-finished beef, I want that because if they're eating grass and they're finished eating it and then they're finishing them, which means they feed them the whole time they're there, and right before they send them to become hamburger tomorrow, they still keep them on grass. Normally what they do is they feed them grain and they bulk them up right before they send them to be hamburger tomorrow, so they weigh more and they get more money. So when they grass finish them, there'll be more omega-6. If they grain feed them, there'll be more omega-6. Sorry, grass-fed is more omega-3. Grain-fed is more omega-6. So that's where you can see that this would make your cholesterol go up. This would make your cholesterol go down. So the where you want yours to be is around minimum 8%. So 10% is optimal. 12% is optimal. 10% is a good place to be. In Japan, they are a consistent 11%. So when we look at this, when we look at your scores, we can tell you, and this is what I like about personalized nutrition, I can tell you exactly how much more you need to take of what you're taking. And if you're not taking enough, we can do that. And if you're already taking enough, awesome, just keep doing what you're doing. But I think this is a great test because we know it's neuroprotective. It's protective for our cardiovascular system, for our joints, for our eyes, for our bones, for our skin. So there's so many benefits of just taking your omega-3s, and those are your fish oils. And here's a study just shows you that it drastically reduces. If you have a score omega index of 8 or above, it drastically reduces your chance of having any kind of acute coronary heart attacks, anything like that. So eat your fish oil or eat your fish. If you're not eating fish every day, you've got to do a fish oil. An aerobic capacity, this is another one of the biomarkers, and it's not cardio, but it's how much you can do, and really technically more anaerobic, meaning using more muscle is more beneficial than the aerobic. So cardio is doing like high intensity work where you make your heart work really hard. Aerobic is just like running 6 miles at just the even pace where you can talk, and it's effective to help you, but it's not going to be maximize your experience for your health. So it's a lot of wear and tear. So gene expression, this is another biomarker. 179 genes related to aging. This is just like phenomenal information here. And there are genes that they reverted to youthful levels of expression in 26 weeks of strength training. Get to the gym, people. Planet Fitness, $10 a month. I don't care how you do it. If you have bands at home, if you have, a kettlebell, whatever it is, lift it, move it. And don't tell me, oh yeah, I've got 2.5-pound dumbbells. No, that's not enough. Doesn't mean you have to start with heavy, but you need to work your way up there. So this is really what they call the first successful reversal of aging. And so that's super exciting. And it's all just based on strength increase of 50%. That's a lot. That's doubling your strength. That's just amazing. So, and you can have this. Nobody's hiding it from you. It's right out there. You have all the tools to do that with. You need some guidance, get a trainer. The 10th biomarker, which is really important, especially as we age, is the brain factors. And BDNF, I talked about that earlier, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's your memory muscle. I mean, that's your coup de grace. You want that. I mean, I do supplementation just to promote that in my body. And the higher that is, the lower effect that we have from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression, obesity. Those are all some of those neuroinflammatory disorders. And it increases skeletal muscle due to exercise, and aerobics is good, but strength training is always going to be better. So here's a kind of a big picture of all that. So your exercise, your low volume, high intensity training, which is 51 minutes a week, was at least as effective as the high volume training. So you don't have to go out there and be a super athlete. You don't have to go do what I do. Not that I'm a super athlete, but you don't have to go do what I do. You can do minimal and still get maximum effect. So the study just showed that the low volume, high intensity protocol only consisted of one bout of 4-minute intervals at 85 to 95% of peak heart rate. So if you have a pencil handy, here's how you determine what your maximum heart rate is. 220 is your maximum heart rate when you're born. Subtract your age from 220. That gives you your maximum heart rate. That's your peak heart rate. So when you're training, you want to get up to that. It doesn't mean you don't have to stay at that. So for instance, mine is like 163 for my age. 60, I'm 64. So it's 163. So when I race, it's at 170. Now I did have my heart checked to make sure everything was cool, but it's not going to hurt you. The intervals that I do when I work out, I bring it high intensity for 30 seconds, recover for 2 minutes. High intensity, recover. And I do that for maybe 10 reps. And that's how you build strength without taking up a lot of time. Calisthenics are great. If you're going to do a jumping jack, if you start with 25 jumping jacks today, by the end of the week, you can easily do 50 because you're getting stronger. By the end of the month, you're going to be doing 1,000 a day. And by the end of the year, I mean, it's going to take you all day to get all the jumping jacks done that you need. That's the advantage of strength training. You add the weight in, that decreases your number of reps and the time amount that it takes. So that's why I've always been a fan of strength training. I go to the gym in the morning. I get a good workout in less than 45 minutes. I don't sit there and talk on a machine. I get my work done and get out. So that brings us to protein. We've talked about fats, we've talked about carbohydrates. I just wanted to talk about the importance of getting enough protein. And most of you are not getting enough protein. Now, you don't need too much. If you're working out hard, you can have a day of more protein. Last class, I'll kind of help you calculate what you need. But, it's in all living organisms. And the key thing you need to know, there are 20 amino acids. 9 are essential for us, meaning that we don't make them. We have to get them through our diet. And those 9 are right down there, histidine, all those. But the 3 important ones are the leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those are the real amino acids that build muscle. We call those branch chain amino acids. Very important to building muscle. So the foods we eat, we want to have in there. So eating chicken and fish and beef. If you're vegan, that's fine. It's a lot harder to get what you need. And, you need at least half your body weight in grams of protein. So I weigh, I'll say 130 just for easy math. So I need 65 grams of protein a day, minimum. On a day I work out harder, I do more. So, and then you have to do a bolus of 30 grams. So your first meal of the day should have at least 30 grams of protein, especially women. Our metabolisms are so much slower. So we want to make sure we get that protein in early so we can break it down to utilize it at night. When we sleep, those amino acids are then available to repair your muscle and build your muscle. If you eat it late in the day, ladies, what happens is your body has to go, do I digest? Do I fix? Do I digest? Do I fix? They'll have to digest before it can fix. So we lose out on that. So try to eat your protein a little bit earlier in the day. Gentlemen, your metabolisms are faster. We hate you for that. Sorry. We're just jealous. But protein consumption is really important for maintaining our skeletal muscle as we age. The size of your palm is 25 grams. If you have a piece of chicken, the size of your palm is 25 grams. So think about how much protein you eat in a day. You eat an egg, that's great. It's only 6 or 7 grams of protein. The protein is only in the white. So if you need a sheet of paper for you type in the chat, Marianne will email you we got a 2-sheet paper that has all the proteins and the amounts on there. You can get them from beans and lentils, but they're higher in carbohydrates and calories for the little amount of protein that you get. Plus, they don't have the essential amino acids in there. So you only can get that. You can get some in and that's why I have you do the Veggie Pro during the purification, because I really want to build muscle. The Veggie Pro has the isoleucine, the leucine, and the valine, those branch chain amino acids. Pumpkin seed, that's where we get it. And it's just hard to eat enough pumpkin seed just by eating pumpkin seeds to get enough of that protein in a day. You'd have a lot of pumpkin seeds to eat to get, your necessary amount of protein in a day. So doesn't mean you have to eat a whole cow, but you need to have something a little bit, if you're going to be vegan, there's ways to do it. It's just a challenge. So you have to be really meticulous. So, think about the, kind of sources that you're going to eat. That's why we want to do the grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We want to do the wild-caught fish. We want to do the free-range chickens that make the eggs, and the butter from the cow that was eating grass. So we want those things, because if we're eating the ones that they're feeding grains, it'll give us the protein, yes, but it's going to raise our cholesterol because of the grains and their omega-6 fatty acids. And I will know when I see your test how good or bad you are, that what you say, because it'll tell me your trans fat too, as well as your omega-3s. So we'll know, and your omega-6s. So we'll know all the details, and then we can calculate exactly what you need. So this was a real interesting, I just want to throw this one in here. It's about gait speed and surviving as we get older. It's saying that if you can walk across the street when you push the button and the little white lighted person is there and you walk across, if you can make it across and keep that speed throughout your life, you're going to live for a long time. If you can't, the slower you walk, the sooner you die. And this was a massive study. So, walk fast. And if you can't, you need to do something about it. It doesn't mean you can't. I know there are orthopedic issues that are there, but you can still get on a bike. You can still get on an elliptical trainer. You can get in the pool. There are things you can do. And you know who I'm talking to out there. You're smiling right now. I've said this to you before. So here's just the threshold. So the gray line, that's, you're going to get the best factors there. So you want to have personalized instruction, and supervision is the key. Somebody to keep you accountable, somebody to help you. You go to a gym, there's always a trainer there. Strength-based resistance, your bands, training weights, dumbbells, kettlebells. I don't care what you use. Unstable tools like a Bosso ball, which is has a flat surface on one side and a rounded, like those balls you can stretch on, the big balls. And so you can stand on the top, and that helps you to mitigate balance as you exercise. That's going to be your best. So the less you exercise, the more, the cardiovascular exercise is important because it decreases inflammation, decreases your insulin resistance, increases your body composition, meaning it builds your muscle. And as you do less of it, it declines. And so sedentary behavior does all the opposite of that. So we want to do a mix of, both muscle strength, but function as well. So we don't want you in that disability threshold. So the older you get, the more exercise you do and consistently doing something every day, especially if you're not working. I mean, you have plenty of time to do stuff. Don't tell me you don't. Figure out a way to do it. 30 minutes. If you're doing push-ups, you can do something with a kettlebell. There's a ton of things you can do. Look on YouTube. If you travel, and I know some of you out there are traveling, I travel and I go to the gym in the morning at the hotel, and there are things I do in the room if I don't want to go to the gym. So you can make yourself a 30-minute workout, and if you need help, ask me. I'll help you. So in conclusion, strength training, it addresses all 10 of those biomarkers of health and aging. It's time efficient. It supports the body with nutritional supplementation. That's why I have you doing certain supplements for this. There would be a specific protocol I'd like you to do after, but we'll talk about that later. But we want to do something to support muscle, ligament, tendon, bone, and joint. That's why you hear me say, if you're over 50, I want you to do cod liver, 4 of those a day. I want you to do Ligaplex 2. Ligaplex 2 is a multi, plus it has muscle, ligament, tendon, bone, and joint support. And then turmeric forte. Turmeric forte is for inflammation, and it's just an overall good support. So those 3 things should be just like your minimal things you should have in your support system. So all of this helps to increase that physiological headroom, that area under the curve. We want to do that over a lifetime so we can expand that area under the curve so we can live longer and live healthy. So we made a recipe last night. I haven't finished it. I'll try to get it done when I send out the recording. But this is something you can try. It's on my website. If you go to Bay Street Wellness, hover over About Us, and you'll see Dr. B's recipes. Just go down on that. It's called the Cloud Pizza. It's made with egg whites. It is so cool. So easy to make. I just put it, I was gifted a KitchenAid mixer, so I put the egg whites in there. So it got stiff. The stiff peaks was forming. I added a tablespoon of arrowroot, or you could use coconut flour. And then I put some Italian herbs in there. I didn't put them until later. I forgot. And then you just take this parchment paper, set your oven at 350, spread it out like in a circle. You can make one big one. I made 2 small ones. I baked it for 15 minutes, and on the right, you can see it was kind of a golden brown. And then I put my stuff on there. You can put cheese on it when you're not on the detox. I just put, we have a keto pizza sauce we use, mushrooms and some black olives, and I put it back in the oven for another 10 minutes, and it was quite tasty, and it was very, satisfying. I like meringue and marshmallow and that kind of texture. So it really kind of caught my eye to do. So for my wine drinkers, did you know that 14 muscles are activated when opening a bottle of wine? Just not yet. Fitness is my passion. I just thought I'd throw that in there. All right, so everything still stays the same. All these things you still can have, nor would I like for you to, not ever do again. Keep those out of your diet. So still you can't have them for the next week. And remember, we have one more week. And remember, we're going to continue the GI adsorb for 7 more days after we finish the 21 days. This is going to maximize this purification program, and it's going to help. And so I'd like for you to really continue eating well that next week for the maximum improvement. You're going to not have the other supplements to do, just those 4 GI adsorb at night before you go to bed. And then if you need to get blood work, or you're going to be doing functional blood work with me afterwards for an appointment, I want you to go get your blood work that Monday or that Tuesday morning on a fasting, so you have fasting, so your blood sugar is all cool, and get that. Your numbers will be amazing. If you're trying to get insurance, that's when you want to do your blood work. All right. So we have one more week, same time, same station. See you next week.